Welcome back to Audio Fanfics. Today is Life is Ours to Choose, a Who Killed Darkiplier fanfic. It wasn't the first time he threatened the man, had stalked him and his wayward friends through the eons, lurked in the shadows of his ridiculous stories, the barrier of words so deep it had kept even him out. Mostly, anyway. Still, they'd both known this day would come. He'd been waiting a long, long time to reach that pathetic attempt of a human. His escape attempts and death defiance would only last so long. After all, there were only so many stories to tell, and he could be patient. He tilted his head as the shadows lengthened around Mark's form, lying prone on the ground. It had taken nearly everything in him to finish the man, surprisingly, though he hadn't expected any less from the snake, the spider that had wrapped people in his web so easily, ensnaring and tricking and lying to those around him until even they believed the stories he'd spun. Trapped. Doomed. He'd waited for the man to get to his feet once again, like he had numerous times at the ends of his stories. Except this time, Mark hadn't had his precious ability to write himself back to life. This time, it seemed, he'd used all his tricks and traps and lies. Kneeling slightly to nudge at the body. His body. It had been so long he'd forgotten what it was like to feel such pleasure for anything. His fingers shook slightly as he turned Mark's form over, staring into the empty gaze, closing his eyes briefly as he sucked in a breath, as if searching the endless shadows around him for any sign of the snake fluttering around like he had before. This time, it seemed, Mark's destruction was permanent. A small grin flickered to life across his features as he got to his feet, slowly smoothing out his suit and turning towards the familiar sound of life he could hear, a brightness that nudged against his own self, one that was familiar, yet not familiar in the least. Straightening his tie with lithe fingers, attention divided between the brightness and another flickering shadow much like his own. So many new choices, so many new people to destroy. Life was his to choose, now more than ever.